Finally, President Bola Tinubu has allocated portfolios to his ministerial nominees. The list was announced to journalists by the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Ajuri Ngelale. According to Ngelale, Tinubu appointed Mr. Wale Edun as the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, while Bumitunji is the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, while the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy is Bosun Tijani, while Ishak Salako was appointed as the Minister of State, Environment and Ecological Management. The immediate past governors of Rivers and Ebonyi states, Nyesom Wike and Dave Umahi, were appointed as Ministers of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, and Minister of Works, respectively. Joining us now on the morning show for an analysis of the assigned portfolios and the Minister's capabilities is Dr. Sam Amadi, Arise News analyst. Great Malabite, good morning. Well, there you have it. What's your take? Good morning. What's your take on the list and the portfolios assigned to these 45 ministers 9 days after they were screened and cleared by the Senate of the Federal Republic?
First, I think it's a good job they did at finding how to optimize a very not too good list they had. I said here before that the list was the great list because not that they didn't have quality people, but it was a mismatch. Didn't have coherence. And today, with our situation and the idea of a developmental state, an entrepreneurial state, you want to have coherence. You have to bring a team that is defined by a strategic vision of governance, anywhere in the world, whether in corporate governance or public sector leadership. The first rule is that a team reinforces itself. A team has to have a purpose, a direction defined by, you work from the script down. You look at the vision of governance. You look at this manifesto. You look at the kind of state you want to create, and then you fit it in. But of course, you have to do with politics. All things are not equal. You have to cater to political interests, geopolitical interests, and all that. So, with in my view, a bad list because of these issues. The team did a good job of placing people, not optimal, but as much as they can. First, if you look at, I think one of the best in my view is Umahi. For works. Look, I'm a critic of Umahi's style of public leadership. Ebonyi is still very poor. Human capital development very poor. Governance, liberty, freedom. The concept of development as freedom, Umahi doesn't care about it. But he's good in infrastructure, in project development, which he has shown in Abakaliki. Being himself a construction engineer, I think he comes with pedigree. I think he's really going to try to deliver on the projects, on the vision around works and all that. The most controversial one is maybe Wike, and if you look at bridges and roads in River State, you would say it's a good fit. But I have a different view. I think that Abuja for years have lacked character. When I fly to Lagos, I've come to Abuja, I see a difference. I mean, no matter how disorderly Lagos is, Lagos has a sense of, you can see that excellence of corporate financial artistry. People are really creative, and there are softwares to help them and hardwares, not necessarily by government, but by corporates. Abuja just lacks character. Abuja should be like Washington. Maybe it's going to be a place where intellectuals, public policy experts sit and deliver products. When Dr. Modibo was here, he tried the idea of the City University of Abuja. He tried to bring some intellectual bent to Abuja. El-Rufai did a great job in terms of resetting the infrastructure. But some others have come in with some sense of conservatism. So Wike, yes, if it's about bridges and roads, but look, Abuja has good roads and bridges, relatively. Abuja needs intellectual reconception. What is the city all about? How do you create a city that can bring in the diplomatic communities, everybody's here, that can thrive on policy, on idea? A city where maybe policy people would like to take a vacation, meet with epistemic communities. So does Wike have that temperament, intellect, and disposition to really create a modern city that would drive excellence in governance, which is what Abuja should be, just like Washington or elsewhere? So controversial. Now, I think that some of the peak, the North, has most of the top governors, and it's difficult placing them. And so you can see somebody going to defense, deputy minister of state for defense, being heavy political hitters who don't have a track record in security or defense or military. But again, people have argued you need a general, a retired general, intelligence officer to deal with the defense. But having the Rubadu and the service chiefs in, we can argue that maybe the work of the Minister of Defense will mostly managerial. Or again, these guys haven't shown any excellence in managerial competence. So let's watch how that play. I'm not really satisfied with that pick. Bosu, clear choice. Again, you can see replication of job, creative industry. My friend Hanatu, a good writer, a lawyer. But again, what's the notion of the creative industry? Is it to encourage, like the Nollywood, boost in the creative economy, which is really a big deal, which could be, according to KPMG, could brain gain, could be the next GDP for Nigeria. But again, I think probably you needed somebody who has been part of that industry to characterize that potential. She's a great lady, but maybe she should have fitted more into somewhere else. If you look at the other pick, they are basically, you are struggling to put people where their pedigree, maybe their disposition. The lady in trade and investment, work in the bank. I don't think probably banking and investment in the way it's conceived today in terms of trade and investment, in terms of productivity, all the usual old commerce and industry comes under that portfolio, the small and medium enterprises. It's not just about financing, it's about capacity building, it's about leveraging, about creating niches and clusters. We should be able to fit in that low skill, low level, not top level, big CEO of a investment bank in the world. But again, Minister of Finance and the Economy, I'm crediting Minister of the Economy, a big one, replicating Jonathan's experience with Konjiwala. Whereas Wale is a great financial guru, experience with the best of industry in the world in terms of finance. But I think if you look at Tinubu's manifesto that verges towards social economy, what we call the managed economy, maybe you need somebody who not just without experience in financial industry, but whose philosophy around recreating the economy will be much more pronounced. We don't know whether he'll be able to coordinate. And then coordinating these governors, these former governors, whose sense of ministerial position might be just to leverage it for politics. So we're going to see whether he will exert the kind of control Okonjo-Iweala had over the economy, coming from her Olympian height of a small vice president of the World Bank, as ex-that, Harvard, MIT. So those things create the gravitas you need to shepherd some of these unruly political actors who have legitimate interest to protect. And so I think bottom line is that this is a fair job at dealing with difficult squaring a circle, where you have politicians who have no other competence than being great politicians coming to a ministerial team, and you have to allocate them to. But they did a great job, in my view, in managing a deficit.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Amadi. Let me talk about a particular ministry that is critical across different, across different administrations, the Ministry of Petroleum. And as you would know, the minister has his work cut out for him. The president, in this sense, seems to have reserved that position for himself, even though there is a Minister of State for Petroleum in the person of Mr. Heineken Lokobiri. What's your take on this? Is it time for the president to remove himself from being the Minister of Petroleum?
I think yes, in terms of functionality, but constitutionally, I mean, Section 5 is clear. The executive power is in the president. This is not in the cabinet. So the president, even if he appoints aides, and Section 5 says he can govern any part of the economy by himself, his minister, VP, minister, or any other public officer. So the president has constitutional legal, authorization to even be the minister in charge of anything, because that's really what he is as chief executive. But again, if you look at the Supreme Court decision on the Petroleum Act, then the president cannot sign oil block, because it's meant for the Minister of Petroleum. So I think that triggered this claim to take over, so that you act as president, and when it fits you, you drop the bag, take a pen, and act as minister. Okay. Now they have Minister of States who, if they are strong, and Heineken has been a politician, I don't know whether he has background in the oil industry, but again, if they are strong, they could fit in as the real minister. But what happens is that the president still wants to keep that residual power to trump them and sign off as the Minister of Petroleum, as the case might be. I don't think it's a good thing. I think at this point, the fetishism around petroleum as this, the lifeblood, this symbol of sovereignty should be over. It should be seen as just a sector. And so the president should have somebody he trusts to hand over, knowing that no matter what you do, is the president can fire and hire. So the risk of handing it over to someone might not be that much. And again, maybe politically it's smart to say everybody's angling for that big job. So if you have somebody else, Minister of Petroleum, Wike is there, maybe someone else person is there, that person says, I'm the Minister of Petroleum, and downgrade it. So if I give it to Heineken Bukobiri, then Wike will not say, oh, this guy is top over everybody. We are still based on petroleum. And so maybe it's smart strategically to take it to yourself and kind of neuter that impact and profile so that everybody else is just a minister. But I think functionally we should exit that fetishization of petroleum as the Nigerian sovereignty. And that will bring more accountability. Again, when the Minister of Petroleum, it's difficult to accountability. When Buhari was the Minister of Petroleum, people don't know whether to blame the Minister of State or blame the President. It's always good to have a President a little bit distance from the ministry so that somebody has responsibility and could be taken out and could be, attacked without necessarily attacking the president. So the president becomes the last resort. But then here, it would be hypocritical to criticize the Minister of Petroleum, State for Petroleum, without talking about the president, who is the minister, but who hides under the fact that he has a minister. That's what creates accountability, lack of clarity and accountability.
Okay, couple of ministers' position I want to look at now. Bello Matawalle prevailed over Zamfara State with a massive insecurities, Minister of State for Defense. Festus Keyamo, with all the challenges he had, Minister of State, the last government, is now Minister of Aviation at a time where we're trying to upscale our aviation sector, and we had the pending issue of Nigeria Air that is still on. Another one I'd like to talk about is the fact that in all of this, we have Ali Pate coming back. And you remember the circumstances at which he left under Yar'Adua's administration. Do you think he'll be given a free hand to be able to work effectively like he wants to work or like he would like to work? And what would you say about those that are saying it's a big loss? El-Rufai would have been a good one for Minister of Power. And maybe powers that be didn't allow him get to that position.
Okay. I think let me start with El-Rufai. I mean, I worked briefly with him at Good Governance Group. When I became NEC chairman, he was the first person I invited to give the what they used to have, what you call Distinguished Fellows program. So he comes with pedigree, first-class architecture, Harvard Kennedy School policy, and of course the work he has done as FCT minister. But it's also a mixed baggage. You see, a minister, it's not just the technocrat, frontline technocrat. There are supposed to be technocrats in these ministries, in the parastatals, NEC, all the agencies. So a minister needs to also harmonize, create an orchestra. Now, El-Rufai's style and pedigree suggests a lot of controversy. Now, take Kaduna, 8 years of Kaduna, with all the brain power, you could not create some semblance of security, trust among diverse people. In fact, it worsened. I think that's a bad testimonial. So when people judge competence and leadership, they just really about the technocratic. And that's why we're talking about now about the tyranny of technocracy. They're talking about human beings. They're talking about alignment. And that reminds me what the economists Akarov and Robert Skiller wrote in their book, Animal Spirit. It says, look, the reason why the economy is not growing, people are not managing the economy well, is because they're looking at macroeconomics, they're looking at data, they're not looking at the psychology, which the old political economists understood. You can't just come technocratically get things done. You have to first be trustworthy. You have to have people repose confidence in you. You have to bring people together. So I don't think it's a big miss. Again, we saw when Fashola came, I didn't get it done. Because the challenge in the power sector is not technical. It's not about fixing transformer. It's adaptive. It's about recreating culture. It's about recreating incentives and getting people together to put together with a common mission to deliver a difficult task. Infrastructure is difficult to get done, especially power, everywhere in the world. We've seen the breakdown of South Africa. We see what's going on in India. India collapsed. We see even in Europe. It's a difficult job that raises adaptive skills, not just technical skills. So I'm not going to miss him much, I think. I'm not the guy who is there, I don't know his pedigree. But again, you need really a strategic, centrally determined strategy that focuses on first diagnosis and rolling out interventions that are holistic, aligned together. And if I could do a great job. And by the way, he was the first under Obasanjo, the first chair of Power Sector Reform Implementation Committee that drove us to the extreme of privatization. He had a chat with me and I explained what I think is not working. What is not working is this fundamentalism about the market. And that's what we need to get back to. So yes, he's a great guy, he has shown pedigree, but again, you have to balance it with what disruptions.
A lot of people have argued with you that you bring a socialist feel to the market and you don't get the fundamentals of the market right because of your socialist outlook. And that's why a lot of people have the back and forth with you as regards understanding the fundamentals of the market.
Well, if they say so, then the Stiglitz is socialist, then Krugman is socialist, then C.S. Lewis. I come with a tradition of established Nobel laureates who say that this is nonsense about market fundamentalism. They say that, look at the Asian transformation. Look at the developmental state from Chalmers Johnson back to today. The idea has been that development is deliberate, is strategic. You have to plug in the whole universe of politics, economics, psychology. Now look at the present policy on floating. I oppose floating. Why? Because now they're saying, oh, they are speculators. My friend Maynard Keynes wrote it many years ago about animal spirit. Today we're talking about there are speculators. You're dealing with psychology. You're dealing with people who, it's about demand and supply. So they're the ones who got it wrong. I got it right. When I was next chairman, I argued publicly that privatization fails usually. Look at the history. I've given you New Delhi, UK. Look at today that even energy policy, climate change, countries are pulling back because the narrative of microeconomics or macroeconomics isn't the economy. And that's what somebody said, the economy is too big to be left to academic economists. So I was right. I said, focus on project management, remodel your plan, understand where you are in the development chain, and build up competencies and transition, staged privatization. And if you look at China, Korea, Taiwan, everybody who has got it right has followed that fundamental premise that economics is not about figures alone. Economics is about human behavior, psychology, politics. And therefore, a great economic manager. And by the way, when Okonjo-Iweala became the Minister of Finance, I wrote an article in this day. I said, you need a converted leftist. That means somebody who understands the value of the market, but who also understands the weakness of market to govern a third world economy. And it's proven every day. Okay. China, India.
So other ministers, like I said, Matawale, I know how to get you started with talk about socialism. Other ministers, like I said, Matawale and defense. What do you think as regards that?
I'm not a socialist. Well, I think first, let's get to Party. I mean, great guy. I think he would have got assurances. At this level, nobody should be a minister. Even as small as I am, I won't go to be a minister until the president gives me assurance. It's a political job. I tried my best under Jonathan because Jonathan gave me support. He was a great president. I think Tinubu would have given Party understanding. The same way they gave to Okonjo-Iweala. They had to negotiate before she came. I mean, you can't come and be a minister. What is minister? When you're thrown out, who cares? So I think he would have got that assurance. And he's a great guy, he would deliver. Now, Matawale and others, look, the problem would not first, and that's the developmental state argument, that you must first have an objective where you want to go. What do you want to do with security? Why do we have insecurity? That diagnosis will tell you whether a man who has been governor of Zamfara and couldn't deal with the problem is the right guy for it. I give an example. Look at South Africa. When they moved away from apartheid, the first CEO of the police in South Africa was the chief executive of beer, the beer company, the Diamond company, not a police officer. And I've argued that if I was a president of Nigeria and I had the constitutional power, I would appoint for the first time a non-police officer to run the police for 6 months. Because the crisis of security is not about kinetics. It's about understanding the underlying issues around institutions, organizations, and how to deliver services. So it's Matawale who failed to do this in Zamfara, the right guy. But again, look at what I said. To be fair to this team, they put a ministerial team defined by politics, strategic interests, lobbying. When you're a political master like Shuaju, one of your strengths becomes a weakness. You see politics writ large. And so politics beclouds project, technicalities and all that. So they have this team, and these governors are going to negotiate big place. Defense is about corruption globally. It's about procurement. And so this endless war against insecurity, now against Niger, who else? It's the governors who have clout, who want to be in that point. I think it's a bad pick, but again, based on what they have, who should be there? Take, for example, foreign policy. Nobody's talking about foreign policy. This is going to be an age where economic development, everything, security will be defined by foreign policy. We are seeing the relaunch of foreign policy as the imperative of economic and social development. And you are putting Tuga, great guy, I like him a lot. But look, his profile is that he's an ambassador, last. He didn't pick a team, an intellectual statesman, somebody who is intellectual, who understands policy, has international network, agencies that are critical to our economic development. Look at Japan with MITI. They linked economy to foreign policy, and that's why they were able to expand their trade influence across the world. So what's the foreign policy objective of this government that makes Yusuf Tuga to be the guy who can drive that? I was a special advisor in foreign policy, in foreign affairs. I understand that terrain a little bit. So this is about fitting the wrong people because you don't have the right people for the. He didn't select the team based on, look, we're looking for Minister of Foreign Affairs. Who among our guys who like us? Don't put your enemy, don't put PDP or Labour Party. Look for your guys. You find somebody who is the best guy for that job.
Sam.
But it was unfortunate to have to do with what they have is politics and politics and politics.
Sam, yes, just before we go, briefly, there are certain features on that list. We have the creation of new ministries. Some other ministries have been renamed. There is now the Ministry of Blue Ocean Economy. What do you think of that, for example? The president has also tried to split some of the ministries. Take petroleum. We now have Minister of State Gas Resources. And then we have Minister of State Petroleum. Well, as you have said, he can, if he chooses, be the Minister of Petroleum. Would that translate into efficiency, greater efficiency? Number 3, he has also decided to divide the Ministry of Sports and Youth Development. Okay, I think it's Ekpo also, who is a Minister of Sports Development. And then you have Abubakar Momo as Minister of Youth. I don't know how old Abubakar Momo is, but I doubt if he's the youngest. He's certainly not one of the young people on that list, but he's the one in charge of youth. But what do you think? Is he just splitting these ministries in order to accommodate a big cabinet, or there could be more positive indications in that regard?
It could be both. I think it's good. For example, the split with gas and petroleum could be a good one. We are being said to be majorly a gas country. So a Minister of State who is detailed on gas could be a good thing. So that deepen that gas economy. Look at this palliative. If we transition to CNG, we could actually create jobs and create a new economy around gas, which is what the gas master plan is all about. So I think it's a good idea. Now, if you get to youth and sports, I think probably we don't need the Minister of Sports, really. I mean, in the past, Youth Fund, we used to have sports development at youth level. The Minister of Youth can carry all that, and they have a commission for sports, like you have elsewhere in the world. But that's splitting it maybe makes sense to have youth. Youth is not linked to sports. That's the wrong notion. Youth, education, healthcare, digital economy, creativity, a lot of things, youths. So it's maybe a good idea. Now, the notion around tourism we talked about before, yeah, maybe, Nigeria probably shouldn't be a tourism country. Look, if you look at economic growth, we are still back to old comparative advantage. You look at the next developed country, Malaysia, want to catch up. You look at what can you produce at lower cost in terms of wage. Then you master it, you overtake. That's how the world moved. From there, you become this. Because why go back to tourism? You don't have any competitive advantage. Our character, our culture, our behavior does not really give us the resources to compete against Kenya or compete against all the coastal states in West Africa or compete against anywhere in Africa for tourism. So if I was the president of Nigeria, I would downgrade tourism. Let's just keep our environment clean, but let's focus on that. So I think that the splits in some senses are good, some are political. And again, we shouldn't skin a president. Nigeria, every president has to first act politically, but the problem is don't allow political strategy to destroy a developmental strategy. But the gas split is a good one. We need to really focus on gas as not just gas for export or gas to power, but gas as a source of expansive economic development. And because we are a gas nation, that's where economic advantage comes in. We can now focus on leveraging, expanding that market, and look at the next gas exporting country in terms of products that are gas-based, and see how we can outcompete them and become the lead. That's really how nations grow. They grow by looking at their what they call factor endowment. What do you have, including intellect, resources, environment, human capital? Then you put them together and say, who else is using that to make economic growth? It's Ghana. Can we produce cheap and outflank Ghana? Yes. You drive it in. So gas could actually be our new source of GDP growth and export capability if we house it well. So I think some good decisions on split and some political ones that probably don't make much sense.
Okay, on that note, we'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Sam Amadi, for joining us on the morning show today. Thank you.